Power Up Gaming, the only destination you need for retro video games, consoles, and accessories. Want access to exclusive specials? Like us on Facebook.
Just full of projects today. Okay, so I got another one here. It's going to be a fun one. What we're going to be doing is taking a really nasty looking Game Boy Advance SP 101 backlit screen that has like dog chew marks and all kinds of things in it. And it's actually a working unit. I was going to say as long as I know. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So it is a working unit. But very, very nasty looking. It's one of those baby blue ones, so not exactly a huge selling unit. Ugly. I'll now show it to you in a minute. We're going to be ripping out the screen in it. And then we're going to be using that screen inside a Game Boy Advance. So we're going to be putting a backlit screen into a Game Boy Advance, one of the original ones, and this is one that sits on my desk, so it'd actually be my system and I could showcase it. It's a purple or blue, whatever you would like to call it. I don't know what the original name is on this one. Indigo, I guess, is the official name, but let's take a look at the bench shot anyways. Okay, so this is the ugly one, and I don't know if you can see it, but it is kind of ugly. There's some teeth marks down here. You know, it's just blah. Ugly, ugly, ugly. Even the inside's not so nice. It's got like teeth marks down here. I don't know what the hell somebody's done to this, but we're going to tear this apart, take the screen out of it very carefully, and this screen is going to be going into here. And that's going to be done with the help of an adapter cable. We do have the adapter cables. As you can see, I mean, this is my test system that I usually use back here to test games after I've cleaned them and stuff. So it needs to be cleaned up and such. I'm not too worried about that one right now. I can take it apart at any point and clean it all up. It's mostly externally. The buttons are all clean and work perfectly and everything. It's more externally it needs to be cleaned up. It is a good example, fully working condition and everything. And worthy, because it's mine to actually take the backlit screen. And there is an interesting side effect also, which I'll do a video on with the backlit screen that I'll show you too in a follow-up video in regards to the battery life that most people won't be expecting. So first thing we'll do is start tearing apart this Game Boy Advance. We've done a few Game Boy Advance SP teardowns the last while. So take off that, and here we have the tri-wing. So there's actually two tri-wing screws that are the small ones. There's one in the battery compartment here, and we'll do a zoom in. And then there's another one just over here in the battery compartment. Sorry, in the cartridge compartment. And then there's four over here. Usually I keep all the components. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the shoulder buttons, because the shoulder buttons on this are fine. I actually have a bag, which we'll go into a bin later on. I'm going to get rid of this whole entire thing, because this is ugly. Actually, I'll keep the button there. I'll keep all the screws and everything. But we'll get rid of that whole component there. It's pretty ugly. Into the recycling bin. Okay, so now, as always, 3 screws that hold it in. These are just Phillips screws. Okay, so you just flip it up. Underneath is the ribbon cable. For some reason it seems a little tighter, but anyways. You just loosen those little catches up for the ribbon cable. And the ribbon cable slide right out. There's buttons and everything. Okay, so there's the board. And I'm going to write right on it, because the board itself does work. So I'm going to put on here that this is a 101. And I'll put on here, maybe over here, 101. just so that when it goes, if I have a board that's malfunctioning or not charging or broken power port or whatever else, I can actually make reference, because this board is different than the 001. The 101 is the backlit, the 001 is the frontlit, and the boards are different. This one supports a backlit screen, so the capacitors and everything else are set up differently. The wiring set up differently, support backlit, where the other one's set up differently to support the frontlit. The ribbon cables are slightly different too, and there's also two different boards for the backlit and frontlits. The ribbon cables are slightly different, so something to keep in mind on that one too. The other thing we want to keep is actually the speaker. I just did a video a little while ago where we ended up replacing a speaker, so we want to keep that, and we'll keep all the buttons and stuff too. So we'll pull all the buttons out of here because we want all those. And we'll keep the battery. You never know. Sometimes the batteries, if they do get really, really hot, will actually expand and start exploding. So in an exploding battery situation, we want to keep the batteries around to replace out the battery. So next is these little caps in the corners. And we're not saving these, so we don't need to be too gentle. I do have a little poking tool here. If I was trying to save these, I'd actually use I would actually use a razor blade and try and get underneath these very gently. But since I'm not saving these, this little pokey tool does fine in actually stabbing it and getting it out. I don't think there's one under this one. Yeah, there is actually. It's been a while since I've taken one of these screens off. I think Candace has taken a few of them off just to replace this part of the screen. This part of the screen does get pretty scratched up in some cases. It is protected, so I have no idea how the hell people scratch the hell out of this screen. But we do replace them for when we go to sell systems. So if this system was being sold and the outside was in good shape, we'd actually replace that portion of the screen too. I will also mention this is actually the first time that I'm actually done this swap. And the other thing I forgot is underneath this ribbon cable there's actually one screw which removes the back piece, which is actually that hinge there, which makes it easier to pull out the ribbon cable from that part there. And then this screen comes out. So the plastic piece on this screen actually pulls right off. But we're actually not going to take that off right now, because right now the screen underneath is perfectly clean. There's no reason to take it off. So as mentioned, this is really scratched up, so we're not going to keep that. We're not going to keep that. What about the battery casing? Battery casing is scratched up. Nah, we won't keep that either. Bracket's not bad, but what's the chance of actually needing the bracket? And all these little cappy things we'll get rid of too. Okay. So all that's out of the way, and we have the ribbon cable there, which we know works, which is perfect. So we've got the screen. I'm pretty sure for size wise, we do need to actually remove the backing, otherwise it won't actually fit properly. Okay, so we'll put that aside, and we'll go to our Game Boy Advance. Okay, so this one here doesn't have, actually they are all tri-wing. Okay, so we'll take out the batteries. Good old Kirkland batteries from Costco. So this one just has a whole bunch of tri-wing, and they are different than the Game Boy Advance screws. These are coarse, where most of the Game Boy Advance ones are actually fine. Screws are quite a bit bigger. So don't get them confused. There will be quite a bit of Dremel work which is why we have the Dremel over to the side, which you can't see. As far as soldering work, there's actually only one piece of soldering that needs to be done, and that's just to run power for the backlight itself. Obviously, there wasn't a concession for that with the ribbon cable itself because there was no backlight, no front light, or anything else on the system itself. So the only other screw here is actually a Phillips screw right here. Okay, so with all those out, this comes straight out. The side pieces come off. The triggers come off. So we can remove all those, put those aside. The ribbon cable itself, just kind of pull it that way, and then you can just slide this out. We're going to keep the stock screen aside. I can always use the stock screen into another Game Boy if there's ever a Game Boy. Haven't had one yet, but if there's ever a Game Boy that actually has a problem with the screen, maybe we can use the screen in that. There is a number of Phillips screws holding the main board down. So there is one there, and those are different screws, and one over here. And I think that's it, just the two screws, if I'm not mistaken. And then the main board flips out, and the speaker just kind of hangs there. So there's the rubber piece for the buttons. We'll actually take those out. Maybe we'll clean them up. Why not? We have it out. The volume and everything. So as far as getting that out, the easiest thing you can do is there's actually a little spot in there. So if we actually grab like a rubber tool or plastic tool, you actually put it in, you can actually squeeze out the screen and pop out the stock screen. The black gasket you will need to remove anyways, so that's fine, we can remove that. Okay, so there's the stock screen out, and we will put that aside because it is going to be useful potentially in the future with another one that does have a problem with the screen. Haven't had any with a problem with the screen, but you never know. Okay, so we're going to get rid of the gasket because we don't need that. So we're going to take a look at the stock screen here, the Game Boy one. And actually, if we're going to be test fitting it, gonna have to take off the front cover, and we may as well take off the sticky part too. Which doesn't look like it's going to come off in one piece. Okay, you know what? Maybe it won't come off as easy as I'm thinking it will. So when you actually lay it down, it does fit extremely well down the left and the right side and everything. Where it doesn't fit is down to the bottom and the corners themselves. So there's a whole piece at the bottom lip. And we'll get some light on here. Okay, so just to explain, so we have this corner here, which is great. That'll hold the screen in place. What we need to get rid of is this corner here. So we need to get rid of this corner here, and this whole strip to the top edge there. So I'm just going to kind of visually mark with the pokey tool where I kind of need to Dremel to. And then it's that whole bottom piece. Okay. And then obviously we need to take off this, and we need to take off that piece down the side there and make that perfectly smooth. So we'll have to take off all that, and those other pieces. I think the easiest thing we're going to tackle is kind of the fine tuning of the other section there. So what I'm going to do is, I wonder if I can get this into the tight spot without, yeah, I think I can. So I'm going to make the vertical cuts just to where I need them to be. I apologize if this is going to be a little louder. I just want to make my cuts so I know where I need to Dremel it down to. Just kind of mark it out more than anything. Yeah, this isn't as fine tuning as I really wanted. Okay, so that bit's not going to work. It's a learning process. We'll go back to our regular one, which I like using. Okay, so we're back, and it looks like the screen is actually sitting in there nicely. I'm going to clean it up still. Um, Still a little rough. I'm a perfectionist anyway, so I want to make sure that it's actually going to sit in there 100%. So I'm going to grab my sanding bit out and just sand everything down, make sure it's completely flush, make sure it's sitting in there nicely. We got the two bottom tabs in there to hold the screen nice and tight and square. And then I'll get my workbench cleaned up from all this plastic, and we'll get going with the next step of again, the wire and the adapter and everything else hooked up. So yeah, I'll be back. So I haven't exactly cleaned up my desk too much, but why is this moving? I haven't cleaned up my desk too much, but I did clean up the plastic a little bit, and it is completely flat now. Also cleaned up the screen, and I'm actually going to grab a little bit of paper towel and a little bit of Windex and just kind of touch up the screen a little bit more. Once I find my Windex, because there's a few fingerprints that I don't like, and these fingerprints will show through, especially with a backlight. Yeah, that's pretty good. So, orientation-wise, everything's sticky. Sticky front, sticky back, everything. Okay, so screen goes like this. Fits down nice and snug. Stickiness is still on there, so it's going to hold it in place. There's a little bit of left to right adjustment. Just try and get it pretty much in the middle between the actual pegs. And that looks to be about midpoint, and that's going to stick down there. Once that's in place, you can actually grab the main board here. Once you have all the buttons cleaned and the buttons are all back in place, don't forget the buttons. And these buttons actually only go in one way, so you don't have to worry about getting them in the wrong spot or anything else. Good if I had the right one on the right side. And the left one on the left side. The only other thing we have to worry about is the volume, sorry, the on-off, which goes just down here. We need to make sure that actually lines up with the actual board once the board goes on. The speaker also has to line up actually. The other thing we have to do is the ribbon cable adapter, because the ribbon cable needs to probably line up with where the stock screen is. And actually, I'm going to put it stop here while I get the right adapter out, and then we'll get that straight. Okay, one thing I will mention to you is there is two different ribbon cables, depending on which Game Boy Advance board you actually have. So when you're actually looking at the ribbon cables here, there's two different sizes of ribbon cables. So the pin counts on them is different. So there's a narrow and a wide. They match up with the actual board you actually have. So in my case, I need the wide one. Some people may need the narrow one. So if you're going to be ordering these, make sure you get the right one. Okay, so just going to pause here. Okay, so now I get the fun job of actually soldering this up to the left leg. And where is my little pointer thing? Actually, I'll use the tweezers. So now I get the fun job of soldering a wire up to the left leg of D1. D1 is this little guy, and the left leg is actually that little leg right there. So what we're going to do is, it's actually a lot smaller than it looks there, just based on bluing it up. So I got this wire right here, this purple wire. So what we're going to do is we're just going to tin it up ahead of time. So we'll go back to the bench shot here. Just going to grab some flux. And there's a resistor right beside that point. So we don't want to actually bridge the connection between the resistor and it. So we're going to take careful consideration of that and actually try and take it away from that resistor. So we're going to actually bring it up and over. Just going to apply some flux to the chip it here. Put a little bit more solder on that connection so it's nice and fresh for the actual wire itself. Clean that up. Okay. Let's go back to that view there so you guys can actually see it. I'm just going to trim this down so we're only dealing with the very, very tip of the wire. Okay. All I'm going to do is apply a tiniest little bit of solder to the actual soldering iron ahead of time. And with my really, really shaky hands, bring it up and over that guy there. What I'll do is I'll take a look under the, because my eyes are really bad too. Okay, and that looks perfect. So we got it away from the resistor, and we've got a nice solder joint on there. Quite a bit of solder, so that'll hold it in place. And I mean, it's hard to actually show you the actual solder joint, but it's away from that resistor. There's quite a bit of solder, and we actually went over top of the actual component there. It gives us the ability to kind of wrap the wire around and take it around the board to the actual ribbon cable, which is where this wire actually attaches to. So in my opinion, perfect job. We can actually loop it around nicely. If you're actually worried that the connection is not going to be good enough, you can actually put a blob of hot melt glue on top of there to actually hold it in place, but I'm confident in my soldering ability there. With the amount of solder it's on there and the joint that I have, that's going to hold successfully and it'll be perfect. So the other thing you can do is actually power this up and actually check the voltage at that point. It should show positive voltage based on the fact that that's for the backlight. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. I just got to let the puppy out. He's being a pain in the ass. So okay, so the other part we're going to do here, I'll get some light back on the desk. Okay, So the next part we're going to do is actually grab the other side of the wire here. That's one we just put on, and we're going to actually attach it to the P1 mark. So we'll apply some flux onto the ribbon cable itself here so we can get the solder to attach to it. We'll grab some solder. And the other thing we're going to do is apply some solder to the wire itself. Sorry, some flux to the wire, which went all over my hand. Great. Okay, and then we'll tin up the wire. Okay, and that's pretty secure there. So I'm pretty confident in that wiring there. So we'll leave it at that. And I can bend that wire anywhere I need it to actually match up with the board there. Okay, so what we've done at this point is we've actually bent up the cable over here and lined it up basically where the stock one is actually gonna line up, or would line up, which is about there. And we've also soldered on the other wire to the actual cable and put a little electrical tape on there to hold it in place. The hard part is actually trying to get this thing lined up perfectly with the speaker hole, with the purple wire so it's not pinching, and with all the other, with the bumpers, with the purple wire not pinching anywhere. And that's the hard part at this point, is getting everything so it actually fits nice and tight. What I recommend is playing around with it with all the components not in place. See how that's not sitting 100%? So that's not sitting down all the way right now, and I think it's that purple wire. So what I'm going to do is feed that purple wire. And try and get that purple wire. Wish I had that. Oh, there it is. Feed it into, there's like a little crevice there. Okay, so now it's past that crevice. It should sit a little more flat now that it's not being pinched. And it looks like it is. So now that we got that passed, we can actually look at getting all the buttons and everything else in place. So the next hardest thing is actually going to be, okay, so that switch is in place. We can get these bumpers in place. These things fall all over the place when you're not, just when you're trying to get the thing finally back together. These things will fall everywhere. I haven't even tried this thing out yet, so we don't even know at this point if it was actually a successful mod. So that's the difficulty you deal with these kind of things, especially when it's a first off. Will it work? Will it not? Will it be a complete and utter waste of time? Like I said, things pop off all over the place. Looks so easy when you first put it together. And then you end up putting it together and remember that you actually forgot something. So there's only 2 screws that actually hold the motherboard down. And both of them are Phillips screws. Where's my Phillips screwdriver that I used? There it is there. That's not one of them. Okay, now that we have that down, we can take a look at this and actually, so it seems like it's sitting flat there. Triggers feel pretty good. Board's sitting flat. We'll try getting this ribbon cable in place. Okay, so that went in pretty good. Purple wire's routed nicely there. Shouldn't cause a problem with the top case, I don't think. Getting close. Getting close. I say shouldn't. But it looks like it may. Doesn't look like it should. Unless that's just the tightness of the new screen in there. Making it a little tighter. Might be the tightness of the new screen in there. Looks like the ribbon cable. I didn't push in all the way. Okay, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna put this thing together. You know what I did? The screws are in the wrong spot. Those motherboard screws are in the wrong spot. I saw the grounding plate and thought, oh, that's gotta be it. They're the different spots. But nope. It's not the obvious ones. It's not the ones you would think. I don't know why they would have targeted those as grounding plates. Okay, let's get a few screws in here. Tri-wing. So now I'm curious if we've actually blown this thing up, or whether it'll be amazing. Kirkland batteries back in. System off. Where's my other battery? There it is. System turns on. It is not very glorious. Turns on. There's absolutely no light to the screen. Okay, so we're gonna done something different. I thought about it and I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm just having a really, really bad day. And I took the obvious. So I thought, you know what? Maybe I just put it upside down. So I checked the ribbon cable and I just placed it completely the opposite way, just for shits and giggles. Because you know what? We all have those off days. I'm hoping this is my off day kind of mess up. And all of a sudden it's going to magically start working. We're going to get a perfect display, nice and bright. I mean, you can't get any worse than what I just had, which was absolutely no display. Make sure it's off. It is. Okay, look at that. I've got a display. Is it a good display? No. But it is a display. Let's grab a game here. That makes it sound like it's actually either the ribbon cable's not in far enough, or a defective ribbon cable, or a pinch somewhere. But that's something we can work on. We actually have backlight. So, open it up and see what we can find. So I'm just going to take the whole board out, get rid of the shell for now. The other advantage is I do have a external power supply, so I can actually run voltage to this thing without having to hook it back up into the shell, and we can see this thing run. And we can kind of cheat. So maybe I'll end up doing that. We'll turn it on. Let's see if we can get a good display. So back in a minute. Actually, you know what? Maybe I already have them hooked up. I do. Okay. Let's get this thing tuned down. So 2 batteries. They're 1.5 volts each. Puts it at 3 volts. That'll be the negative right there. positive right there. And that is the so we got a picture. That's a start. What we'll do is we'll disconnect this ribbon cable, and we'll try again with this ribbon cable. So what I'll do is I'll remove the power, and we'll just put that over there for now. Disconnect this one, we'll resituate it and see if we get the exact same picture or a different picture. This one's kind of a pain. This one I just flipped around to see if we could, let's see if I had it in forwards or backwards. Well, the contacts look good there. Not dirty or anything. So we'll try putting that in again. It's extremely tight. You can hear the comments now. Okay, so see if it made any difference. Nope. So the connection problem isn't there. So it's either at the motherboard or it's a problem with that ribbon cable. So what we'll do is we'll flip this over, flip the screen that way, and we'll take a look at this point. So just pull that out, stuck that back in, again, negative, positive, power, same display. So now what do we do? Do we try another ribbon cable? Maybe. Means we'll have to solder in the connection again for the backlight. Damn. I know this display works fine. Worked just fine beforehand. There's a faint line at the top of it too. You know what? Why don't we do this just for the sake of trying, since we're going to disconnect it anyways. Okay. So we still have the board here, the SP board. Sorry, just taking a look at what my dog's doing. And let's get this right. So screen goes like this, screen flips up, display goes like that, and the ribbon cable give me a second here. Dogs should not be playing with elastics. So I apologize, guys. Sorry about that. Okay. So we're going to try is we'll hook up voltage to this SP board. Hey, maybe there's a chance I'm human. maybe there's a chance I screwed up this display during the transition. Maybe, maybe, maybe. So we'll rule that out. Now, what does this run off of? I think it's 3.7 volts. 3.7 volts. So we'll crank up the voltage to 3.7. Sorry, I gotta. Okay, so as you can see from this, the screen is actually good. So that points to the ribbon cable being the issue. So, looks like we're gonna have to swap out that ribbon cable. So the mod just became that much more expensive. Hopefully that's not the case. I had to wait for a long time for these ribbon cables to get here, and having defective ones is not a good thing because it takes a long time to get replacements. So, I'll stop here, I'll get another one out, and we'll try. Okay, so we got that now soldered in there, and we're just gonna flicker on. And look at that, perfect display. So definitely was that ribbon cable. Such a shame too. Expensive way to find out we got a bad ribbon cable, and it's very annoying for my part. Thought this was going to be a nice easy mod, but apparently not. Most of my most of my mods tend to go that way. Find out the hard way, we have problems. Okay, so we're going to stop here and attempt to put it back together. You guys have seen me put it back together, so don't need to go through that one. So I really got to get a new cover on this thing. So this wasn't an easy mod in the end, with having a problem with the ribbon cable, having to diagnose it, and everything else. Luckily, I wasn't a home user. Otherwise, you would have had one ribbon cable and had to wait for a second one to be delivered. And as mentioned, it was a long delivery. But let's see here. Here's a game. Fortunately, it's Tetris, but we'll throw that in. We'll go widescreen. Beautiful backlit display. Unfortunately, it's a pretty crappy screen cover on it. You can see, let's get zoomed in. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Display is really, really nice. That was my first one I did, so obviously the next one should be a lot smoother. I would expect it to be a lot smoother without much concern. I know kind of the tips and tricks and everything, so yeah, I don't expect much of a problem, but yeah, definitely recommend attempting that. It's something that we will be offering in the near future. Once we can find I guess a more reliable source for the actual ribbon connectors, I will contact the company. The other problem that we actually had, which I didn't even mention, is the ribbon cables where the wire actually connects to the ribbon cable. We actually went through an extra ribbon cable because the solder point is extremely, extremely delicate. And the first one actually pulled right off. So that's an additional issue that we'll have to deal with the supplier. We may end up getting our own actually made. I do have the ability to actually get our own ribbon cables made, and that's one option I may end up doing, but we'll see where it goes. Thanks for watching, guys, and please subscribe.